Lavender. That was the first scent on my wife's skin when she came back from the big house. Lavender covering what a man tried to take and rename as his. I lay still, counting the sounds in our dark cabin. 2 hounds breathing outside, 1 clock in my chest, and a vow I made under the oak, to keep her mine in the eyes of God, if not the law. My name is Samuel. Georgia, 1848. The master said Martha belongs where she's wanted. He meant his room. He meant my silence. He meant that a ring woven from a bit of twine and prayer is nothing against paper deeds and iron. That night I did not pray. I listened to the boards creak under his boots, the way a thief tiptoes in a church and calls it his house. I studied the trail to the pine woods where men drink and forget their sins. I watched the moon choose a side when it slid behind the trees, and I sharpened a small knife until it could split a whisper. Before we go on, subscribe if buried history matters to you, and comment your state below so I know where you're watching from. This story is not just mine. It belongs to anyone who has ever had love stolen and been told to smile about it. By sunrise, the master would learn there is a price for stealing a man's wife. In those Georgia woods, justice wears no coat and asks no leave. If freedom demands blood, would you pay it? I was born on the Fairborn plantation, deep in the red clay heart of Georgia. By 30, I had learned to bend my back without breaking my spirit. Martha worked in the big house, where the smell of polished wood and perfume masked the rot underneath. We met at the well one evening, me drawing water, her humming a hymn to chase away the day's cruelty. Under the old oak, Reverend Thomas married us. No papers, no witnesses from the white world. Only our people, firelight, and the sound of cicadas. I tied a bit of twine around her finger and said, "As one in all things." She smiled and said the same. For a while we lived like the promise meant something. But promises don't survive long where freedom doesn't exist. The master's eye fell on her. He liked the way she walked, the quiet dignity in her face. When he called her to the big house more often, I told myself it was for work. When she started smelling of lavender and silence, I stopped believing my own lies. That night she came back late, her hands trembling. I asked nothing. She said nothing. Just lay beside me and faced the wall. The candle burned low, the flame bending like it couldn't bear to watch. I closed my eyes and whispered, "They can own the field, but not the soul." But a voice deep inside answered, "Not unless you let them, T1 Alabama. 1 plantation, 1 forbidden love. A trail of blood begins. If someone took the person you love most and the law called it their right, would you still obey that law?" The nights grew longer after that. Martha would return from the big house smelling like lavender and tears. She would sit on the edge of our bed, washing herself with slow, trembling hands. I'd pretend to sleep, but my chest would ache from holding my breath. One evening, I reached for her hand. She flinched. "Not tonight, Samuel," she whispered. I let my hand fall, but the hurt didn't stop there. It spread like fire through dry cotton. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, like something that had stopped believing in echo. "Master says I serve in his chambers now." She didn't need to explain what service meant. I wanted to scream, to fight, to drag that man from his room and make him see what he'd done. But all I could see in Martha's eyes was fear, the kind that came from memory, not imagination. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't be Isaiah, the man who once stood up for his wife and was sold south, gone forever, swallowed by the sugar fields of Louisiana." His name became a warning whispered through the cabins. "Endure," she said. "We'll survive like we always have." But as she lay beside me, her breathing shallow and broken, I realized survival was no longer enough. Enduring meant dying slow. That night I stared at the ceiling until dawn, counting each crack like a path to freedom. The man I had been, the obedient one, the careful one, died before the rooster crowed. In his place rose someone new, someone who had nothing left to lose. 1848, Georgia. 1 master's desire, 1 husband's silence, a storm gathering under the oak. Would you stay silent to survive or rise and lose everything? 2 days later, I heard talk in the fields. Master Fairborn was heading to Savannah. 2 overseers, a wagon, and 2 days away from the plantation. I kept chopping cotton, my face calm while my mind raced. That evening, I worked harder than ever. Jenkins, one of the overseers, noticed. "You're putting the others to shame today, Samuel," he said. I wiped sweat from my brow. "Just doing my part, sir," he smirked. "You keep this up, you'll have easier work soon." I saw my chance. "I heard the master needs a driver for Savannah," I said. "I know the road well. I can handle horses." He studied me for a long moment. "That's a trusted job." "Yes, sir," I said softly, "and I'm a trusted man." That night I was summoned to the big house. Martha was inside serving supper. Her eyes found mine only once, and in that single glance I saw both terror and a tiny spark of faith. Fairborn circled me like he was inspecting a mule. "Jenkins says you volunteered to drive to Savannah." "Yes, master." "You've never given me trouble," he said. Strong, loyal. Then he smiled, a slow, curling thing that made my skin crawl. "You're married to Martha, aren't you?" My heart froze. "Yes, master." He leaned close, voice dripping with arrogance. "And how is your arrangement with her?" He was testing me. He wanted to hear if I resented him for taking what was mine. I bowed my head. "Whatever pleases you, master, pleases us." The words burned my tongue, but they bought me what I needed. Fairborn laughed. "Good man. Be ready at dawn." When I turned to leave, I caught sight of Martha by the dining room door, her tray trembling in her hands. That night she found me behind the cabins. "What are you planning, Samuel?" She whispered. I took her hands. "Trust me." Her eyes filled with tears. "You're going to get yourself killed." I touched her cheek. "No, I'm going to make him remember what fear feels like." She stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "Then be careful." And in that moment her fear turned into faith. 1848, Georgia. One false smile, one perfect chance. A husband with a blade of patience. If you could face the man who destroyed your world, would you kill him or outsmart him? Dawn broke over the fields in a cold silver light. I stood by the stables, tightening the harness on the wagon, while the mist still clung to the ground. The horses snorted, their breath white in the air like smoke from a slow fire. Fairborn came out laughing with his overseers, Simmons and Jenkins, bottles of whiskey clinking in their bags. None of them saw the small changes I'd made. One loosened bolt on the right wheel, just enough to fail on a rough road. When the wagon rolled forward, it was like time itself began ticking. Each turn of the wheel brought us closer to justice. Fairborn sat behind me, chatting as if I didn't exist. "That new shipment of slaves should arrive next month," he said. "I want young ones this time. The last batch wore out too soon." The overseers laughed. Then Simmons added, "And the women too, eh, master? Young ones last longer for all kinds of work." Their laughter cracked like whips. I gripped the reins tighter, my knuckles white. We stopped at midday under an oak tree. While they drank whiskey and ate, I pretended to fix the bridle, checking the loosened wheel again. The crack had begun to form. By sunset, it would split. "Boy, bring us water," Fairborn called. I obeyed, eyes lowered. "You're quiet today," he said. "Just focused on driving, master." He nodded, smiling that same vile smile. "That's why I like you, Samuel. You know your place." If only he knew. By nightfall, his place would be bound in the dirt. We set off again, the sun dropping low and red behind the trees. I could hear the wheel creaking louder, a sound only I was listening for. They laughed, talked, and drank behind me, not knowing that each mile was their last in control. As darkness spread across the road, the wheel gave its final warning, a splintered pop. I pulled the horses to a stop. "Something's wrong with the wheel, sir," Fairborn cursed. "Well, fix it, boy." I jumped down, knelt beside the damage, and smiled into the shadows. The wheel wasn't broken. It was opening, like a mouth ready to speak the truth. 48, Georgia. One road, one broken wheel, one man counting breaths to freedom. Would you wait for the right moment, or strike now and risk everything? The wagon sat crooked on the roadside, the broken wheel half sunken into mud. Fairborn cursed the road, the horses, and me. "We camp here," he barked. "Fix it at first light," I nodded. "Yes, master." They built a fire while I tended to the horses. The orange glow flickered against their faces, 3 men laughing at the night, drunk on whiskey and their own power. I moved quietly, feeding the flames, fetching water, playing my role to perfection. They didn't notice the small vial I took from my pocket, laudanum, a sleeping draft I'd stolen from the mistress's cabinet. I poured a few drops into the whiskey flask when their laughter rose the loudest. "Come, boy," Fairborn called, waving the flask. "Drink with us?" "No, sir," I said. "Don't mix work and drink," they laughed. "Proper slave," Simmons said. "Knows his place." By midnight, their voices slurred, their words crumbled. "Quiet one, that Martha," Fairborn muttered near the fire. "Didn't think she'd be so spirited." Laughter again. I kept my face still. Inside, a storm built behind my ribs. One by one, they lay down. First Jenkins, then Simmons, and finally Fairborn, muttering something about obedient hands before the whiskey dragged him into sleep. The forest sang its night hymn. Owls calling. Crickets droning. A far-off wolf mourning something only it understood. I rose, slow as dawn itself. The knife in my boot pressed against my skin like a heartbeat. I looked down at the men who had stolen everything from us and whispered, "You won't wake easy." Their ankles I bound with rope, not tight enough to wake them, but enough to buy hours. The knots were clever ones I'd learned fixing wagon lines. Then I took Fairborn's coin pouch from his belt, payment for years of stolen life. Before I left, I whispered, "Sleep well, master. You'll wake in a world that no longer belongs to you." I untied one horse, slapped its flank, and watched it vanish into the black pines. Then I mounted the other, the night swallowing me whole. The wind carried the smell of smoke and pine, sweet, wild, and free. 1848 Georgia. 3 men sleeping, 1 rope. 1 man rising from chains. If justice meant leaving your enemy alive but broken, would that be enough? The road home looked different that night, emptier, wider. Each turn of the horse's hooves echoed like a drumbeat of war. The money pouch pressed against my chest, and in my shirt pocket lay the forged pass Martha had written by candlelight, our only paper weapon against a world built on papers. By the time the eastern sky began to pale, I reached the edge of Fairborn's fields. The overseers would sleep till noon if the drug held, the master longer, but by sunset they'd come for us. I hid the horse near the woods and crept toward our cabin. Through the window I saw her, awake, sitting on the edge of our bed, hands clasped like she'd been praying all night. When I stepped inside, she didn't startle. "I knew you'd come back," she whispered. "I told you I would," I said, pulling her into my arms. For a moment, the world was still, just breath, skin, and the rhythm of 2 hearts that refused to stop. Then I pulled away. "We don't have long. Pack only what we can carry. Food, warm clothes, the quilt your mama made." She gathered things quickly, calm as a soldier. I added the money, divided, hidden in the seams of our clothes. When she looked up, her eyes burned steady. "What did you do, Samuel?" "What needed doing," I said. "They'll wake, but not soon." Her hands trembled as she tied the last bundle. "I was afraid you'd go back for revenge." "I didn't," I said quietly. "I went back for you." Before we left, I took her hands. "Remember our vows under the oak tree?" She nodded, tears glinting. "To be as one in all things." "Then say it again," I whispered. And we did. 2 souls binding themselves once more under the shadow of dawn. When the last word left our lips, I knew. Whatever came next, we faced it as one. We stepped out into the gray light. The fields were empty, the air heavy with mist and risk. I lifted her onto the horse, then climbed behind her. Thunder's muscles tensed beneath us. "North," I said. "Toward the river." "Toward freedom." The horse surged forward, hooves striking sparks from the earth, carrying us away from the life that had never belonged to us. 1848 Georgia. 2 rings of twine. 1 vow renewed. 2 shadows racing the dawn. If the price of love was freedom itself, would you ride into the unknown? We rode through the swamps and pine brakes, following the faint glimmer of dawn until it faded again into the thick woods. Thunder's hooves pounded the earth, his breath harsh in the cold air. Behind us, the world we knew was burning, not in flames but in fury. By noon, we'd covered near 20 miles. Martha's arms were tight around my waist, her cheek pressed to my back. We stopped by a shallow stream to rest and drink. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Then came the sound that split the stillness, the baying of hounds. Martha froze. "Samuel?" "I hear them," I said. They had woken, Fairborn, Simmons, Jenkins, maybe more. 3 men I left alive, now leading a dozen more into the woods, chasing the 2 souls they thought they owned. "We'll lose them in the river," I said. my voice steady though my blood ran cold. We mounted again, guiding Thunder straight into the water. The current bit at our legs, washing away our scent. We followed it downstream for half a mile, then crossed to the far side where the trees grew thick and wild. The dogs' cries grew faint, confused. For a while, silence returned. Martha looked up at me. "Do you think they'll stop?" I shook my head. "Not men like them. They don't stop until something's broken." We pressed on, deeper into the woods. I kept the pistol tucked in my belt, the one I'd taken from the wagon chest before leaving. I prayed I'd never have to use it. By dusk, the light was fading and Thunder's steps slowed. We came upon an old hunting cabin half swallowed by vines and shadows. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Inside, the air smelled of pine and dust. I led the horse in, tied him quietly, and shut the door. Martha spread our quilt on the dirt floor and sank to her knees, trembling. Not from fear, but exhaustion. "Sleep," I whispered. "I'll keep watch." She looked up. "You think he'll come himself?" "Yes," I said. "Men like Fairborn don't hire others to get their pride back. They want to do it with their own hands." Martha nodded slowly, her face half lit by the dying light. "Then make sure he remembers what your hands can do too." The night outside was alive with insects, and the faint, distant sound of dogs still searching. But somewhere between those echoes, another sound began to rise, the sound of rain. And in the Georgia woods, rain is mercy. It hides tracks. It cools blood. Silences everything. 1848 Georgia. 2 fugitives in the rain. 1 storm for cover. 1 past closing in. If your enemy hunted you through the dark, would you run or make the forest remember your name? By morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the forest glistening like wet glass. Our clothes clung to us. Our hands were numb. Thunder limped slightly, worn from the hard ground and cold. We needed water, food, and rest, or we wouldn't last another day. Through the mist, we saw smoke, thin and white, curling from a chimney on a nearby hill. A small farm. No overseer's bell. No fields full of slaves. Just 1 house, 1 barn, and the smell of bread. Martha gripped my arm. "We can't risk it." "They've got a well," I said. "The horse won't make another mile without water." We approached slowly, staying close to the trees until we reached the stream that ran behind the property. As Thunder drank, I heard voices, soft, not angry. A woman and a child. "Hello there," she called when she finally noticed us. Her voice held no whip, just curiosity. "What brings you folks here?" I tipped my hat. "Just watering our horse, ma'am. Headed to Milton on business for our master." She narrowed her eyes. "And who might that be?" "Master Fairborn, ma'am. From the oak plantation south of here." Recognition flickered across her face. "I know of him," she said, the words bitter as vinegar. Before I could speak again, she glanced around, lowered her voice, and said, "You're running, aren't you?" Martha stiffened beside me. I reached for the pistol under my coat, but the woman raised her hand. "Don't worry. We won't tell. My husband and I, we help people sometimes." Her eyes darted toward the barn. "Go there, rest, I'll bring food. But you must leave by sunset. Patrols are thick on the road to Milton." For a moment, I couldn't move. I'd seen too much cruelty to trust quick kindness. "Why help us?" I asked. She looked down, her voice trembling. "Because my sister worked in a big house once. Her master was just like yours, that was enough. We followed her to the barn where she gave us bread and dried meat." "Sleep if you can," she said softly. "My husband will guide you to the swamp tonight. Safer that way." When she left, Martha whispered, "You think she's telling the truth?" I nodded. If she wasn't, we'd already be surrounded. We lay down in the hay side by side. For the first time since leaving the plantation, I let my eyes close. The last thing I saw was Martha's hand resting near mine and the faint light spilling through the cracks in the barn wall. A light that, for once, didn't feel like danger. 1848 Georgia. A stranger's mercy. A barn for shelter. A new road north. Would you trust a stranger? If one kind face stood between you and freedom? Dusk bled across the sky when the barn door creaked open. The woman returned, this time with her husband, a broad, bearded man carrying a lantern and a rough map. "My name's John Baker," he said, keeping his voice low. "Sarah told me you need a road north." I nodded. He spread the map on a barrel, its edges smudged with dirt and sweat. "This here's the cypress swamp. No patrols go through it. It's too thick, too wild. But if you follow the white cloths I've tied on branches, you'll come out north of Milton by sunrise. A man named Jackson will be waiting with a boat." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "You'd risk that for us?" John smiled sadly. "We've lost family to men like your master. Helping you feels like getting a little of them back." Before we left, he handed me a pistol. One shot, maybe two. For defense, not revenge. I took it quietly, feeling its cold weight like truth itself. We thanked them and slipped into the wet darkness. The swamp was alive with whispers. Frogs croaking, insects buzzing. Water dripping from trees hung with moss like gray shrouds. The air smelled of rot and rain. Martha rode behind me, her arms tight. "How will we know if we're on the right path?" "We'll see his cloth markers," I said. "They'll catch the moonlight." Hours passed. The horse moved slow through the mud, hooves sloshing in water that sometimes reached his knees. I kept my eyes sharp, searching for flashes of white. Every few yards we found one. A torn bit of cloth tied to a branch glowing faint under the moon. Then came the sound that made my blood freeze. Voices. Not frogs, not wind, human. And behind them, the low, hungry growl of dogs. Martha whispered, "They're in the swamp." "They must have found someone to guide them," I said, my voice barely breath. "But they don't know this trail like we do." We turned left toward deeper water. The trees closed in. The ground turned to muck, and even the moon disappeared behind the canopy. Still, the sounds followed. Closer, then fading, then close again, like ghosts that couldn't choose which way to haunt us. Thunder slipped once, nearly falling. I whispered encouragement, stroking his neck. "Easy, boy. Just a little further." Hours dragged by like days. When the moon broke free again, I saw something ahead. A faint line of dry ground, and beyond it the shimmer of open space. We had reached the edge of the swamp. And behind us, silence. The hounds were gone, either lost or waiting. Martha exhaled, her voice shaking. "Do you think we made it?" "For now," I said. "But the night isn't done with us yet." 1848, Georgia. A swamp of secrets. A pistol with one shot. Two hearts chasing dawn. Would you rather drown in the swamp or turn and face the hunters? The swamp ended as suddenly as it began. One moment, mud pulled at our feet. The next, the ground turned firm. The trees opening to the faint shimmer of moonlight on open water. The Savannah River stretched before us, wide, black, and moving slow as breath. Martha's voice was soft. "It's beautiful. It's dangerous," I said. "And it's our only way out." We followed the water's edge north until lights appeared through the mist. The town of Milton. Dockside shanties, quiet warehouses, a few lanterns burning by the piers. But there were other lights too, patrol torches, moving, searching. "They're expecting us," Martha whispered. "Then we act like we belong," I said. I pulled out the forged pass she'd written, the one in Master Fairborn's handwriting. Under moonlight, the ink looked like truth. We waited until the patrol turned down another street, then rode straight for the farthest dock, where a medium-sized riverboat sat half in shadow. A man stood on deck, tall, bearded, wearing a worn captain's coat. "Captain Jackson?" I called quietly. He looked up, eyes sharp but kind. "You Samuel?" "Yes." "Then you'd best get aboard before those lights come back this way." I helped Martha dismount. Thunder snorted softly, his coat steaming in the night air. "What about him?" she asked. Jackson nodded to a young black deckhand. "We'll sell him in Augusta. The money'll go to the cause. He's earned his rest." Martha pressed her forehead to Thunder's, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then she turned and we stepped onto the gangplank, our feet leaving Georgia soil for what might be the last time. Jackson led us below deck to a narrow cabin. "Stay quiet till we're upriver," he said. "Patrol's been thick as hornets tonight." Through a crack in the wood, I watched the shore drift away, the trees shrinking, the torches fading. The river carried us north, dark and silent, like a secret too heavy to tell. For the first time since leaving the plantation, I let my shoulders drop. Martha took my hand, her fingers cold but steady. "Do you think we'll make it?" she whispered. I looked out at the black water and said, "We already have." 1848, Georgia. A river divides bondage and freedom, two souls on borrowed time. If the world called you property, would you risk everything for one step on free soil? The river was a mirror, dark and deep, carrying us through a world that felt half dream, half ghost. Every creak of the boat sounded like a heartbeat. Every ripple like the whisper of someone watching. Captain Jackson checked on us at dawn. We made it through Milton. Patrols searched other boats, but not ours. You're safe, for now. Martha smiled faintly for the first time in days. For now, she repeated. We ate in silence, a bit of bread, a sip of water. I could still hear the captain above giving quiet orders. This boat saved more souls than I can count, he said when he returned. But not all make it. The river doesn't forgive mistakes, so by afternoon the sun broke through the fog, glinting off the water like blades. I thought about all we had done, the lies, the theft, the ropes. And yet, for the first time in my life, I felt clean. That evening, Captain Jackson brought us new clothes, plain but neat. Once we dock in Augusta, he said, walk steady. You'll pass for freed folk if you act like you belong. He handed me 2 pieces of paper, forged manumission papers declaring our freedom. Keep these dry, he warned. They're worth more than gold right now. When the boat docked, the air smelled of sawdust and new beginnings. We disembarked under the setting sun. Jackson clasped my hand. You've got far to go yet, but you're not alone. The Underground Railroad runs strong from here to Pennsylvania. Martha hugged him tightly. Thank you, she said through tears. He tipped his hat. Don't thank me. Thank the Lord that men like your master can't own the river. We walked through Augusta's narrow streets, following a young guide named Moses to a small church on the edge of town. An old preacher waited by the door. Welcome, children, he said softly. You're safe here. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow you ride again. That night we lay side by side in a cellar lit by one small candle. Martha whispered. Do you think the others back home know we're gone? Yes, I said. They'll hear it in the silence. The kind of silence that sounds like hope. Outside, the bell of the church rang once, low, solemn, free. 1848 Georgia. One river behind them. One border ahead. One faith unbroken. If freedom meant living with fear forever, would you still call it freedom? 'Tis been many years since that night in the Georgia woods. I write these words from St. Catharines, Canada, where the winters are long and the people call me Mr. Samuel. The first time someone used that word, Mr., I almost didn't turn around. I wasn't used to being called human. Martha and I built a small home near the church. I work with wood, building doors and tables. She sews gowns for fine ladies who admire her hands, but never guess what those hands once endured. Each coin we earn feels different from the ones I took from Fairborn's belt that night. These are clean, bought with labor, not with pain. Our first daughter, Sarah, was born free. Her cry the morning she arrived sounded like a hymn that rose higher than any whip could reach. Sometimes at night, Martha asks, Do you ever think of Georgia? I nod. Every day. Not with hate, though that flame still burns low, but with something stronger. Remembrance. Word reached us years later that Master Fairborn died alone. His fortune lost, his fields overgrown, his name a whisper of shame. They said he cursed my name till his last breath, as if that could chain me again. But what I left him with was worse than death. A lesson. That a man can own land, gold, and bodies, yet still lose the one thing he believes untouchable. Control. Our story traveled faster than we ever could. Old Thomas wrote once saying, Your name walks these fields like thunder. They say you fought without killing, and still won. I keep that letter folded in my Bible. Now, when I hear the wind move through the pines, it sounds like the voices of those who never made it north. I talk to them sometimes. Tell them how Martha still hums while she works. How Sarah is learning to read. How no one can ever sell her laughter. If freedom was born from blood, then ours was watered with endurance, faith, and fire that never burned out. To anyone who hears this now, our story isn't about revenge. It's about remembering that even the enslaved carried kingdoms inside them. Kingdoms no master could touch. And though time buries names, it cannot bury truth. In 1848, a master stole a man's wife. But in those Georgia woods, that man stole back his soul and changed history with it. 1848 Georgia. One vow kept. One legacy born. One truth that still echoes. Freedom is the loudest silence of all. If Samuel and Martha's story moved you, Subscribe to help keep these hidden histories alive. Leave a comment below. Do you believe justice can exist without vengeance? And don't miss the next story. Another buried rebellion waiting to be heard.